Got it. Got it. Awesome. So I think that this marks like the first part of our conversation, which is like understanding a little bit about you and your fund and how you guys are operating. And on this second part, I want to share with you, first of all, what I do. I help home service business owners grow and scale their business into 7 and 8 figure companies by mastering lead generation, by learning how to do SEO and Google ads, Facebook ads, and so on. Because as you probably know, one of their biggest challenges is acquiring new leads and new clients. And a lot of the marketing firms out there are as notorious as some of the private equity companies, right? So they don't have a good name for themselves. A lot of low quality work. A lot of people are outright scamming service business owners. And so you need, as a business owner, you need to master this. In my opinion, this is one of the two most important components. One is sales and the other one is marketing. And I deal with a lot of, I would say, million and under companies where the owner is the main operator of the business. And I'm sure that a lot of our listeners are at that point where they're doing $200, $300, $500, $700,000 a year in their service business. The business is good, good profit margins, whether you're a locksmith, garage door service company, plumber, whatever, HVAC, whatever business that is. But they want to understand how to take it into their next step. And so that's my question to you, because you're seeing those success stories, those companies that you're able to acquire, and they're still operating without the owner who's necessarily heavily involved in the day-to-day operation. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts and some of your tips on how to build such a successful operation.
Sure. Oh man, I have a lot of stories on this topic. We invested in a swimming pool construction firm based in Phoenix, Arizona. It's the largest swimming pool construction firm in the country by volume. They build like 2,000 swimming pools a year just in Arizona. And when we invested, one of the things that they said was, we spend a lot on marketing, and we just wait for people to let us know that they're ready to build a pool. And what they meant is they spent a lot on radio advertising and some billboard advertising based on some relationships, to the tune of about $2 million a year. But they didn't have any tracking, right? And then they had a PPC firm that was industry specific that was buying Google AdWords on their behalf. And so we walked in and we said, okay, this is interesting. You guys are spending significantly compared to the size at the time on marketing. Let's see how well this is working, right? And several of us, again, had started in the ad world, and, so have an appreciation like you for, you want to understand the value of every lead. You want to understand how you're originating leads. And there are a couple things that I would say were at play. So one is just that, when people who don't have a marketing background are making marketing related decisions, oftentimes they're getting sold based on fear, right? So it's sort of a fear-based sell of, hey, you don't understand Google AdWords. I do. So let me work this magic for you and you don't have to worry about it. Not understanding like whatever you're paying for, like we don't do in many other categories as operators, but for some reason in marketing, it works. I don't know why it works, but it tends to work particularly for smaller companies. And sometimes it's borderline predatory, right? So in this case, they were working with a PPC firm who was also working with all of their competitors in the market and operating one unified account on behalf of everyone, and no one could access their own information. So they owned the keywords. And so, depending on how much your listeners actually know about that marketplace, if you don't own the keyword and someone else is spending the money in an account you can't access, if you don't work with them anymore, then you don't have any of your background, right? None of your information. And if that same account is bidding on behalf of multiple URLs on the same keyword, you're bidding up the auction organically between yourselves, right? So basically, if everyone's building on Pool Builder Phoenix, and you're one pool builder and your competitor is the other pool builder, and you're both paying the same guy, you're both going to pay more because he's running the auction and you're both participating. And so it was this wild situation of just conflicting. It was bad. And so
they hold you hostage because at the end of the day, sorry to cut you off, Emily, but it just, it makes me like freaking furious because at the end of the day, they hold you hostage because, okay, you don't want to work with us? Go start from scratch. And so all
Correct.
of your data and everything that you've built so far, you'll be like, oh my God, how do I do all of this? I have no data. I have no idea how to do it. I need to now start looking for a new company without having anything to show for. And so, yeah,
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's scary if that's a significant lead source for you, right? If you believe that to be a significant lead source, cutting it off like that can be pretty scary. We had confidence that we could build it up again on our own. And that's ultimately what we did. And my advice generally is if somebody is running an ad firm in that vein and they will hold you hostage, chances are if you go find somebody who organically creates it on your behalf individually, you will be better off. You may suffer short term, but it's not going to be a long-term issue for you. And you should never let someone do that. So that was one of the issues going on. Another issue was that they were spending money in a variety of different places that were untrackable at pretty significant amounts, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And when you do that, you just kind of have to organically believe that the people that walk in the door are good leads for you. But they had this issue with, they had bad internet traffic based on some early versions of like content marketing that people had done on their behalf. So like, enter your email to download 10 reasons why you should build a pool or something like that.
Yeah, like a lead magnet.
So yeah. And so, the lead quality on that is terrible because you're getting an email for somebody who didn't actually say, I want to build a pool. They just downloaded a piece of information, right? So, again, by a scoring standpoint, you would think like, well, that's not worth circulating to your sales team because it's probably not a lead worth calling yet, right? It may turn into one, but based on that indication, it's just an interaction on your website. Well, they didn't have that distinction in terms of assessing lead quality and figuring out how to funnel people into interactions that made sense based on how, substantive of an indication they had given about a purchase intent. And so with that, we said, okay, we need to actually be able to track leads. And we need a site that gives people the ability to signal with varying levels of strength what they're interested in doing, right? Including, distinctions between, are you trying to contact service? Are you trying to contact remodeling versus actually building a pool? So those are the types of distinctions that they were kind of lacking in terms of the way that the website was set up originally. So we were looking for ways to improve upon that, but also because of the magnitude of spending, it was sort of chaotic. So we ended up actually reducing spending the first year, just so that there was less going on and we could pay attention to where we placed things, how they were tracked, and just start to assess like, a lead cost measure, and also a lead quality measure based on how they came in and what they indicated. And so we did that, and, it's not rocket science, but it is incredibly helpful if you feel like you don't know where your leads are coming from and you don't know why you're spending what money. Just to take it down a notch and then start to assign that. So we ended up putting somebody in place who was just a lead quarterback. And that person's responsibility was to know the origination source, and then what to do with that lead based on what they said. And that was experimental for a while, right? So we would say, okay, here's what they indicated. And we did a lot of like testing around form length and types of questions. So as you can imagine, and this may be relevant to like landscapers in particular, but for pools, one of the things is how much do they already know about the pool that they want to build, right? So that includes design and size and features and other things. So we had this crazy long form that we tested that had, I think, 37 questions on it. So you can imagine it takes a few minutes to input. Yeah. No, it takes a few minutes to input all your information on. It was the highest converting form that we had, right? But you can understand why. If somebody is at that juncture around making a decision, they're ready to buy a pool, right? They've already done their research. Yeah. They're just trying to figure out who is going to best serve them. And it was incredibly helpful for the salesperson because in advance of talking to that potential customer, they now had a tremendous amount more information off of which to build the conversation. So all of that matters in terms of how we think about, how you build that funnel, right? But my overall, assessment of when we walked in the door was we were spending a lot of money and we didn't know why we were getting the leads that we had. So if you fast forward about 18 months from that period, again, lead generation is always iterative. The way that company generates leads now is different than the way that they generated leads in that first 18-month period. And it should be. And when you can, you should dedicate more resources that can focus on that element of the business. But even within that first 18 months, we had, I believe it was about 4 times the lead flow, spending about 60% of what they had previously been spending. And so when you can make those kinds of optimization changes, obviously on a profitability standpoint, it's incredibly worthwhile. But in terms of increasing your opportunity generation, obviously super valuable on that side as well. So in general, it's an area of business, when we're talking to a business that is consumer facing specifically, it's one of the first things we dig into is just understanding where they are in a level of sophistication on that side. And the cool part is you can always level it up, right? There's always more to do. There's always more to test. And when you get to a certain size and scale, you can run, grander experiments, right? That can allow for you to, make leaps, if you will, instead of just gradual improvement.
And it's not rocket science. I think that's the most important thing. And a lot of the the contractors and the home service business owners who have this initial fear is they think, I've never grown up with a computer. I'm more of a field guy, whatever it is, whatever story they tell themselves. Yeah, you might have a steeper learning curve, but it doesn't mean that you won't be able to figure it out, especially if you're taking someone on that shows you step by step how the whole process works. And so even if later on, whether you're hiring an outside marketing agency, a virtual assistant, which is what we advocate for, or a person in-house to deal with your marketing efforts, that's it. No one can fool you around anymore. No one can sell you just air because of that fear of, you're going to miss out or whatever it is. So yeah, I think it's vital for every business owner to know that. And it's funny. I want to understand. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, just to stop you there for a second, the funny thing that we hear sometimes is we'll talk to owners who will tell us, sort of with pride that they've never had to spend on marketing. And that's sort of the inverse of what you're talking about, right? Where they just believe that, we've done so well with referrals that we've never had to advertise ourselves. And it's a really interesting element of sort of an operator's philosophy because referral-based business is phenomenal, right? Nobody doubts that. But if you haven't flexed how to continue to increase your opportunity set by spending at least some amount of money, you also have deprived yourself of better understanding your market, right? And you are relying solely on those connections. And if for some reason those start to move away, like if you're in a transient location where people move away really quickly, or if the market dynamics start to change, it's actually a pretty big embedded risk just to rely on referral-based business. So we have really interesting conversations with potential sellers as well on that front, that there's absolutely nothing but pride if you're able to have a substantial referral-based business, but making the business solely rely on that indicates that you probably have an opportunity to reinvest in marketing that you have not taken yet, right? And you should.
Absolutely.
It doesn't mean that you personally have to do it, but somebody should.
Absolutely.